The opinions expressed in the following are those of its participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the producers and the Six Talk Podcast Network. Also, the following contains mature material and mild language, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Discretion is advised.
This is the Anime Roundtable Canada on this Wednesday evening, May 25th, 2022. You can contact us online on the web, animeroundtable.com, Twitter and Instagram @Anime Roundtable, and email animeroundtable@gmail.com. Boy, it's been a while.
Wait, has it?
Yeah, it has been, hasn't it, right? When was the last time we were on?
I'm guessing not that long ago, right?
Yeah, a month? That's a while for the way things have gone here. The good news tonight is it's not just myself or Mo or Kevin. We got a full table again. So Mike Nicholas with you from 6 Points. And then remotely, it's a full table, as I mentioned. James Austin, Kevin Ng, Mohammed Shamarki, Jeff Gregg have managed to join us. Our schedules matched for a couple hours, guys. Thanks for taking the time. It's been a while, but I'm glad to chat with all of you at once again. Especially you, James and Jeff, because you weren't around the last time we were here about a month ago.
So what did you guys talk about last time?
I forgot. My notes are missing.
Was it about Will Smith single-handedly helping the Oscars find relevance? Was that it?
Has it been that long?
It's been more than a month. Yes, it's been more than a month since then. Oh my goodness. What do you make of that? Okay, we did, I don't think we talked about it at the time, but we've had a month, and do you guys want to say something about this?
There were a lot of things going on with the Oscars because Disney had them on the leash saying we need to make this shorter, so they did weird different things. There was the other thing with animation. If you look at, for example, there was a great acceptance speech for animated short, and then you saw the introduction of the Disney princesses for Best Animated Film, and you were kind of like, that sounds like very different, their idea of what animation is.
What?
An award
show disrespecting animation? Who would have thought?
Let's just say that they made it sound like animation is that thing family friendly, your kids can't stop talking to you about and stuff like that. So I guess all those more mature stuff we've heard about, they're good for the whole family, as they say, right?
I think it's time for a remake of Barefoot Ganon.
Well, we're going to talk remakes a bit later. But there's an idea, though, and maybe a worthwhile one, actually.
I don't think
for many different reasons.
I don't think they should actually remake it, but I feel that there should be something that really makes people understand the variety of animation. I like a lot of family friendly, I guess air quotes, animation. The biggest things, one ended for me lately has been Amphibia and Owl House by Disney. Disney Animation or Television Animation, whatever their studio is, and those are technically kid shows, but there's so much variety that award shows don't pay attention to, and that's how it is.
Yeah, well, that's why there's probably a separate awards. Remember the
Annies.
The key word with the Oscars was always relevancy in recent years, right? That's a catchphrase with them these days.
The Flash entering the Speed Force.
I mean, that was the greatest moment in all of cinematic history. Come on, guys.
Which one?
The Flash into Speed Force.
No comment there. I'm still digesting it. Okay.
So from the past to the future, I hear that next weekend would have been Anime North, but they're going to do a little something, right, on the Saturday.
Yes, they are. Okay, more on that a little bit later on, because I think that would be perfect for the calendar, wouldn't it? Right? So, yeah, we'll talk a little more Anime North a bit later on, because we are taping on what would have been Anime North weekend. And we're past the second anniversary of the pandemic series here, at least for the podcast. Well, past second anniversary for a lot of things when you say pandemic, really. So, yeah, we've been at this now for 2 years. First of all, I'm really sorry that it's taken this long for another episode again. There is, like, as nice as it is to have some sense of normalcy, sometimes there are cases where, life can really get in the way of these things. And maybe there will be the odd moment when you just say, especially when it comes to wanting to do this podcast, I miss the pandemic.
I mean, if you miss it so much, there might be another one around the corner.
Oh yeah, well, yes, that's.
Are you saying the monkeys are coming to give us their pox or something?
I mean, you guys have to remember, Mojo Jojo is gonna get his revenge.
Oh wow! Well done. Well done. Okay. Yeah, it's just that's been the thing. Hopefully, we can get our schedules to match up a little better. At least once every few weeks, we can do something like this. Okay, so James, Geoff, do you have a thought on Netflix? Since that was the main thing we talked about a month ago, and there's been we've had a month to let the whole news settle in. Do you want to say anything concerning Netflix quickly, or anything that's come up lately, and some of the thoughts that have come out over the last month in relation to Netflix and streaming services and anime?
Nothing surprising, I think. It's like, as we said, maturing industry and stuff like that, and more competitors. And so now they're going to have to go back on certain things, and they're going to have to look at ads in the programming again, I guess. So they're probably going to do a lower tier, just like the other guys, as we know. And the other thing is, as we said, price increases and stuff like that to make all that content. You got to somehow pay them. And the thing with that is prices are going to go up. And the old joke about it, oh, it's cheaper than cable and all this other stuff. Well, guess what? We're back to where we were with cable, right?
Yep.
You're never going to escape it.
Oh,
Geoff, you have a thought?
Shaman King is available on Netflix. The final part should be, I think, later in June, July. I have a lot of thoughts about Netflix, like for, various reasons. At this past Halloween, so, 6-7 months ago now, I guess, I had a student, for Halloween cosplaying, because I work in education, a student who cosplayed or dressed up as Psyche K.
whoa.
Which I considered a fairly obscure choice for Halloween. A couple months ago, I saw a student sketching Psyche K as like a sexual, aromantic representation. They just wanted to draw, a bunch of different LGBT characters. And like I asked them, it's like, is Psyche K popular? Or whatever the Life of Psyche K, the full title of the series. Is it popular? Yeah. And they said, yeah, pretty much. And I'm like, do you think, I wasn't intending to make this a podcast research project, but I asked, like, do you think it's because of Netflix? And they said, yeah, probably, because, a lot of people have access to it. And I've seen the first few seasons, and I enjoyed it, but it is not the kind of series that would, elicit cosplay and sketches, I think, if it wasn't for Netflix. And, as I've mentioned in the past, I'm a fan of the globalization, I guess, of anime, in lighter ways, like with that what was that heist show called?
Oh, Great Pretender?
Yeah, that one.
You're talking Great Pretender?
Yeah, exactly. So in light ways like that, and in more significant ways with something like Super Crooks, I think that's what it's called. And there's all that kind of good stuff. I think we might get into the voice acting element of it later, but
Oh, we will for sure.
yeah.
For sure.
And I think that there's it's I think it offers a fairly good variety, a fairly good combination of not super old series, but at least here in Canada, we have a fairly good variety of what people would call classic series, and the mega popular and the more obscure. So I think the variety is pretty good for a platform that isn't an anime platform. But right now, if I was paying for my Netflix account, which I don't, I'm part of the maybe soon to be axed, multiple accounts
Just
system.
Yeah, just guarantee whoever is your benefactor maybe a Tim's card or something.
Well, I don't.
This is the discussion Neil and I will probably have in the very near future. By the way, just for reference.
So like if I was paying for Netflix, I would cancel it because like they've been doing wonderful things, but the recent like announcements of like if you have moral problems with what I'm doing, quit. So like that's rubbing me the wrong way.
I mean that's kind of whack, right? The whole you gotta quit if you don't like working on Netflix.
It's not like, of course, like I feel like if it was phrased like that, it would be better. But it's clearly saying like, oh, if you have problems with all the racism and transphobia, maybe you should it's part of our corporate culture. You should maybe find other employment. Like it's like Netflix was warned. I don't have the article in front of me, but Netflix was warned about at least the Chappelle special, and I'm probably the Gervais one as well. And it gives them press, or it gives them eyeballs and stuff. So they, it is unfortunately this attitude Netflix has recently. It's a feature, not a bug. They, despite all the positive things they've done, like Heartstoppers and what have you, they are still profiting over overt hateful speech. And yeah, I would cancel Netflix if I was paying for it right now because of that. Like, I would pirate their shows. I don't care. Like, it's unless they change, I'm pretty open and happy to say that.
Well,
or I'd watch it
kinda
the
like
other way.
it's kind of like me saying, "Okay, maybe I'll pirate Kenshin."
Yeah.
The anime starts. We've had that discussion 6 months ago. See, and I forgot to give you guys the article because I looked this. Apparently, this showed up on my feed. There was a line from, at least in Japan, that the streaming side is gaining some traction in Japan. And maybe that shouldn't be a surprise that these things eventually would happen. It is, we mention it because Japan loves its physical media. We've always said that. That's a line we've used in the past on this podcast. But it's made some inroads, and I think that it's dominated by Amazon Prime and Netflix. I think those are the two main players, but there's like literally a dozen main services there.
Disney's probably swimming in the waters, as we talked about before. So obviously those untouched markets they're going after and stuff like that, because the other markets have grown to a certain extent as far as they'll grow. So they had to go to those untouched frontiers, and a lot of them, especially Japan and even Korea, we've seen they've made a lot of partnerships to make those gains they're at now, obviously.
Yeah. So, what was I about to say? Yeah, and there's plenty of other services. I mean, when it comes to Netflix, on the J-List blog about not too long after the whole, almost a month ago, there was a line about have we reached peak Netflix, and Peter Payne, the famous owner of J-List, kind of gave his thoughts on it. And it's not all, he didn't think of it as necessarily all bad. It's just a crossroads. And he stated, lack of worry for the anime industry, which is probably a fair statement to make. Just more of a worry for any production that is specifically under the Netflix umbrella. That was where the concern was. And remember, considering some of the venom that does exist for Netflix, maybe it's not the worst thing in the world. Like Cowboy Bebop, right?
I think it's more of when the money is going in from Netflix and some of it is more under their control, because we've seen with the cuts in that animation got hit hard. And I'm trying to think of how many they actually got out the door before they just mothballed it, right? And it feels like a lot of the other tech companies like Google and that, where they start saying, then it feels like if it doesn't work out within a minute, they mothball it, which is kind of sad to say the least.
R.I.P. Google Plus.
I was going to say Stadia, but yeah.
Wait, Stadium's still around? Come on.
When it comes to Netflix and anime, I am I guess this is a question for everyone, or at least I'm curious if anyone has any thoughts. And I guess I'm wondering how you feel, and this is, I guess, pretty much Netflix exclusive, how everyone feels about binge culture when it comes to anime. I'm not sure if you mentioned this last time, because, in sort of recent reflection, in general, I'm fine with binge culture or with binging, I guess, or multiple episode releases at one time. Like if I think to whether it is the Shaman King reboot or JoJo Stone Ocean, and think back to my time of watching those series where they're releasing half seasons or mini, full seasons of 10 to 13 episodes, and thinking okay, yeah, I enjoyed watching, three episodes in a row, 2 episodes in a row, and having all of those available for me over a weekend or a week. And I'm like, yeah, that was fine. But I'm thinking to recent or a little bit more in the past experiences with Invincible, and more recently the latest season of Young Justice or Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And I feel really big excitement for the next episodes. I am waiting for Thursdays where both Star Trek and Young Justice drop, and there is a palpable excitement. And I'm not sure if it's just those types of storytelling is working, and I think Invincible had similar, although Strange New Worlds is episodic. Um, but I'm curious. Do you think anime, and anime is a very broad medium, but do you think that a lot of series will benefit from these large amounts of episode drops, or do you think some will suffer? Um, I think Japan Sinks works as a drop because it's essentially a movie, but I'm very curious, yeah, what you think about if it will hurt other series.
It suffers. Assuming you're not a one-shotter movie, it suffers 100%.
Well,
I was gonna say it's a case by case situation, right? I mean,
I was going to say the same as Mo too, case by case, right?
Oh, go ahead.
I mean, I was just gonna say for me, it's like when Arcane came out, that was 3 episodes, 3 weeks. That was pretty cool. But I mean, I like it when it's week to week. Young Justice week to week is cool. Week to week in general is cool. That's how it always was. The excitement of watching the episode in the next week, right? But I do prefer chunks of episodes. If it's a 13 episode or something, getting 2 episodes a week or 3 episodes a week. But that's just me.
That sounds like the a version of the Amazon Prime way of doing things.
I think the
Or at
other
least
thing is, I think about week to week, right? Is how you engage with the content and stuff like that. Is like some people, when they go to week, they don't want to be spoiled or anything like that, and they want to either go on to Twitter, go to the water cooler, wherever the water cooler is, right? And discuss with other people what they saw and their excitement and stuff like that. So I wonder if that plays a factor in there too. And then some people, they may not come on board till way later and stuff like that. And as we said, may binge it and stuff like that. So they will have been past that, how do you call it, the water cooler talk or that excitement when it originally aired.
Yeah. Well, let's call it the break room now. I guess. Yeah, it's weird. It's just we're in a hybrid state, I guess. I guess hybrid seems to be another word, a catchword these days.
Because for me, it all depends and stuff like that. And like some, I'll be like, I want to see it. Like if I'm excited about it, I want to see it the next week. I'd rather get it sooner. And other ones, it's like whenever I see it and stuff like that. And I guess a lot of the talk that happened around anime that went against Netflix and stuff like that, that they wanted the week to week, is because we were so used to that for the longest time because of Crunchyroll and Funimation and stuff like that, and them doing simulcasts and stuff like that. And if we had talked to ourselves then a decade earlier in the early aughts, we would have said, no, it's never going to happen, stuff like that. There's too much red tape. No one's ever going to be able to do it like an hour after they broadcast in Japan, stuff like that. And then there we are and stuff like that. And even now, we're at a point where we have dubs, like in your local language, even quicker than we ever thought possible and stuff like that, where it's like maybe it's the same day, maybe it's just a couple of weeks later and stuff like that, which is kind of nuts to think. Like they're almost in overdrive creating these shows to localize for certain markets. And that's why it takes so long when you have to do that binge one, because there's so many languages you gotta do and so much just to get it right.
And it's
Yeah,
interesting.
Go ahead, Geoff.
No, and it's interesting because you mentioned that, like, oh, we're used to it. We're used to the episodic, week to week basis. But when it comes to anime in particular, a lot of my early, consumption of anime, especially because I do enjoy English dubs, it would be buying a set and essentially having the option to watch multiple episodes in a row if I so chose. Like a lot of, like, aside from whatever YTV would show us, um, you know, that was until, the infamous 3-part 11-minute episodes of Host Club on YouTube. Until that point, like, that was the option. It was seeing what DVDs the high school or university anime club had, making the big purchases at Anime North or at Starstruck Entertainment, stuff like that. So it's interesting that, like, in my opinion, or from my perspective, the world of anime has always kind of had that option of some series are going to be week to week, and some are going to be stuff you wait for and get in 13 or 52 episode chunks.
I guess in a way, like I can see what you mean, and I did think about that in a way, but I felt like we're so much smaller of a community back then, and even instead of like trading the tapes that were fan subs and stuff like that, we were trading legitimate tapes and stuff like that. I felt like the penetration wasn't there where it is now, and even when they started doing the simul cast and stuff like that with Crunchyroll and that back in 2010 and that.
It's it's just weird how anime consumption in many respects tends to be contradictory to maybe more mainstream versions. It used to be back then. We as our fandom we're used to the binge watch because of tapes, because of fan subs. I remember in the late 90s getting like a friend of mine lending me like a whole 6-hour tape of Ranma dubs, and I sat there watching it all night. It was literally a dozen episodes. but it was in a culture that was into watching television on a week-to-week basis. And now we're at this point where, I guess we have to kind of reconcile what's been in our fandom and where it could go in the future. And that future, strangely, could go to a model that was very Western 90s in terms of watching television shows, or just 90s altogether in terms of anything, in terms of mainstream, whatever region is considered mainstream for its consumption of television shows. Right? I mean, as I said, this is, I mentioned just before we taped, This Is Us on NBC ended this week. Right? Although maybe the only difference now is our culture likes to talk about, what happened in it. Our water cooler, to extend James's metaphor, our water cooler is now on the internet. It's just that's what's interesting about it, about where our thing is now. Now, to more an opinion on Geoff's question. My opinion is probably runs along the lines of Mohammed and James's thoughts, which is when you asked that question a couple minutes ago, Geoff, it was more, okay, I thought about Yasuke. Yasuke was 6 episodes, right? You could have watched it all at once. I chose to watch him in, I think, chunks of 2. So I watched it over 3 different sittings over a couple weeks. But you can make an argument for both, I guess. But then again, it was just more the time for me. But yeah, it's just one of our weird cultures. And, and we talked about, this, me personally being very busy at the moment. So I haven't had time to watch things these days. I barely got through 2 episodes of Kaguya-sama in the last week. And before that, it was 0.
The new season or an older season?
The second season.
Okay.
I'm in the middle of the second season. The new season's going, and I know they bring out episodes weekly. And then I'll watch Spy X Family as well, just to screw around with my head. I mean, I have the first episode of the second season of Be the Beginning. Be the Beginning. How long has that been, James?
It's been a while, right? Because they already had that physical edition that took forever to get out, right?
And
I know there's the sequel, but I haven't gotten to watching that either. So I know, and that was a shorter run.
Oh, isn't that the second season?
Yeah, there's the second season I know, which is a short one, but I haven't gotten to watching that.
You haven't seen it yet?
I just watched the first.
I barely got into a couple minutes of the first episode of the second season on Netflix.
Yeah, so I'm not there yet. So I guess I'm behind you.
Wow, imagine that.
As you said, too much content out there, right?
Well, it's a lot to go on, and I don't know. It's just, this is an ongoing thing. This is like one of those ongoing tensions, and maybe one of those things we'll talk about. Do you think our fandom now is in tune to doing things weekly, on a weekly basis?
Yes.
I think it's trying to. I think the industry wants it. The powers that be in the industry are trying to steer it that way because, here's the irony to me. You wanted, if people outside of Japan want to consume it the way the Japanese do, sometimes it is going to be weekly, right? Well, that argument you can twist around a bunch of different ways.
I guess as we were talking about long before, it's like we're going to go full on Japan if Crunchyroll has their way. It's like you're going to get that TV version there forever and ever on streaming, and if you want all the corrections and everything and perfect animation and retakes and whatever else you want, you better be paying for the Blu-ray, right?
Pay for the Blu-ray or a version that will have to be paid for in a premium sense. Kevin, give me a thought.
So I look at Stone Ocean and how the first 12 episodes were dropped at once, and people don't really talk about it because it was released all at once. Whereas I look at previous seasons of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and why do you think it blew up? Because people were reacting to episodes every week on Reddit, on forums. Like, I'm okay with like 2 or 3 episodes at a time. That's fine. But like, I think for new shows, it's integral to have these episodes trickled out because you want people to talk about these shows. You want people to anticipate the next episode. You want to see the fans and viewers react to your product.
Yeah, you need a longer tail, of course, especially for the merchandising and for everything else. If you only are there for a moment, then you better get a lot out of that one moment, right?
And it sucks.
It's like a viral moment. So.
Or kind of like the cherry
and
blossoms.
It sucks how like this happened with part 6, where it's the female JoJo with a mostly female cast, and it's one of the better JoJo arcs. And I'm just like, really? Like, it had to happen? You had to do that, Netflix? Really? Especially when they have been testing out different methods. It's like, yeah, why did you do that with Stone Ocean? I don't get it. We'll never know.
Well, there you go. So, as I said, no right answer, I guess.
I think of the times when I watched like anime on YTV. I was watching Witch Hunter Robin as it came out on YTV, and I was watching Gundam Seed, and we would go on the Xanon forums and talk about how, like, oh wow, this came out, and can you believe what happened? And it was the Xanon Canada forums. This is before Jesse turned into a podcast. It was just a nice little community of people who just cared about anime in Canada, like cared about anime being broadcasted in Canada and theatrical releases in Canada. So, and also just on other forums too, like let me think. Okay, so a little bit of a break in thought, but I remember when I watched Higurashi as it came out in Japan back in 2006. This is the first series. And I remember the Anime News Network forums were like thriving because, a little extreme, but the Higurashi thread was often being very active by people like myself who were reacting to the episodes and trying to theorize, oh, like, how come things are happening this way? Like, I wonder who's going to die, and why did they reboot as if the first 4 episodes didn't happen, and people were theorizing about different things, and that just really added to the discourse and built a connection amongst total strangers. And that's what generates buzz. That's what generates excitement. That's what generates fandom.
It's our cult. It nurtures the culture in many respects. The water cooler, the virtual water cooler again, right? But just a quick aside, has anyone ever watched episodes of ANN After Show? Is it really that type of thing? Is it really look back on like an episode of a series or something?
I actually haven't watched any of those.
No, I haven't really. I know they have other things they talk about, what's in the news and things like that, but they talk about a specific anime. They've been talking about different ones, obviously, since, was it Attack on Titan ended? I think the last one was about the new Netflix series, Vampire in the Garden, which was an original from Studio Wit. And that one was easy for them. I think that one was 5 episodes. That was another interesting animation takes. It wasn't its traditional, hey, here's 12, 13 episodes or 26 episodes. It's like, here's like an old school OVA type thing, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So just, and maybe now to close the topic, now that you brought it up, James, and to close the topic on Netflix, because we really should move on about 33 minutes in. What Netflix did make an investment of some sort into Studio Wit, right? We talked about this some months back. less than a year ago, but months ago. Anything on that with all the issues going on there? Or can we make a guess, or just that's what it is right now?
I'd have to go back and look at that because I'm not sure. Because remember, Studio Wit is a part of IG Port, which is Studio IG, Studio Wit. There's some other ones like Zbeck, like other animation things. Garden Mag, which is manga and all that stuff. So that probably is where they can get some of their source material. So there's a lot going on under there. But it's kind of funny how under IG Port, I feel IG, Studio IG, they still do great animation, stuff like that. But it's almost like Studio Wit has kind of creeped up behind and overtaken them in a way in conversation as a prestige studio, right?
Yeah, and so I guess there is some curiosity as to how the whole Netflix thing is going to affect them.
And obviously, they've worked with them on other things on the IGN, like Ghost in the Shell and stuff like that. They've been doing stuff on that with them.
So the questions will continue, and it's ongoing. If I'm to make a guess, maybe this is just part of the way business goes, and everybody involved will just adapt in whatever way they need to keep going. So in that sense, let's not worry about the industry. It's there. It just has to evolve, and we'll watch it, and we'll give our thoughts, and try and make sense of it, I guess. Here's another thing that we have to try and make sense of. Okay, this has been an ongoing discussion. We haven't really talked about it here. Everybody's trying to unionize these days, aren't they? We heard. Okay, the dub thing we're going to get to in a couple minutes. I mean, with Crunchyroll. Just to preface it, remember, I think dub's done under the Netflix banner that got SAG. That went under SAG at a point. I constantly joked around about Apple stores wanting to do so, and stuff going on Amazon. Everybody wants to unionize. Which part of this story? Where do you want to start with this one, James and Geoff and guys?
Well,
do you want to start with the Crunchyroll end of the story, or do you want to start with or do you want to go to the Seven Seas part?
Well, it's kind of all over the place on that one and stuff like that, as they say, especially with the pandemic and with everyone getting crunched. So it's across many, many industries. It isn't just video games. It isn't just manga. It isn't just dubbing studios and all that stuff. The other thing is you have to engage your workers and stuff like that. And for some places, a union may work, and for others, a union may not work and stuff like that. It all depends on how you're going to organize and stuff like that. And certain parties, when they talk about unionism, they don't talk about the full picture and what the union can bring and stuff like that. There's some places, and I know Kickstarter, they tried to do similar things, but that union, a lot of those people got bought out, was you can't guide the principles of the corporation or the company. You can't be the head of the ship. You can control your working conditions, your pay, how things are done that are on the employees and obviously the people working for that company. But you can't then overtake the company. You know what I mean? That is the ownership that has that responsibility and stuff like that. You can't negotiate for that. And that's why it feels that we've heard some of that. But overall, from what we were talking about, manga and anime, that is, I think, and even video games, legitimate concerns that are where unions can help and stuff like that, and may need to be put in place to have that push to say to people, hey, we either need to get things right one way or another, right? And unions may be a part of the answer, depending on how it goes. Because as you know, as some unions grow older and things like that, sometimes they don't always work quite the way members may want, right? But in this case, it probably would work out. So do we want to start with Seven Seas, or do we want to start in dubbing? Or
I have trouble. Like I skimmed through the Crunchyroll story. It sounds like it's less. The union just comes into the story a little bit to me, but really the focus is really just getting back, like becoming more Texas centric again.
And
'Cause they
that's where I think some of it happened and stuff like that. There were two things in there. They were obviously talking about SAG, which we've heard about before and stuff like that. And that's obviously the one that Netflix signed with for all their dubs to be unionized. And then the other one is just an advocacy group, which was CODA,
yeah, the
which
coalition
was
of
a coalition of dubbing actors, which they did I guess a town hall, a virtual town hall, so to speak, but they were just advocating, which was CODA. And so they were talking about that. And as we saw with this season, all the new stuff, basically, if it hadn't had a dub before, they all went to Texas, to basically where Funimation was and stuff like that. And supposedly, I guess they had invested in their dubbing studios and all this other stuff. They wanted to get used to it. And as we know, when Sony originally bought Funimation, they talked about how they dubbed things and stuff like that. And good or bad, that is what they were looking at and stuff like that. And so obviously this is a big thing. It helps Crunchyroll as well and stuff like that, where they're going to go into Texas. The thing is, I'm not sure how much they can actually. We know how much content there is. I wonder what their ceiling is, because they're dubbing in a lot of anime this season, and it's a heavy season because it's spring. Other than that, all those LA studios, even though all the ones Crunchyroll originally did were not unionized, right? They were doing low rates. It'll be interesting to see whether they go back there or not, but it doesn't sound like that's the case. And they're also going in person only for a lot of these dubs. So before, they were actually doing virtual recordings and stuff like that with the VAs, and they were going outside of Texas and California. They were going to New Frontiers, which was great, but it doesn't sound like that's going to happen going forward. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And a lot of them, they went to Texas because, as we know, right to work state, right? So they know that helps them in one way, whether that's good or not. Probably not the greatest in the worker sphere, right? But as they said, if some of them got together, you never know. It's like if they said, hey, we want to do something better, I wonder how long it would be before Funimation, Sony, and Crunchyroll, whoever the heads are, decide to make a deal, right? Because that makes me wonder, because I know the California people aren't going to come to them if they say, hey, we need someone to dub these episodes, right?
Hmm.
And as we know, too, just to put a quick point on it, there was Ascendance of a Bookworm, season 3, and they just started putting out English dub episodes. And that cast, I'm going to assume it's the whole cast, but I know from the tweet from the actor that played the main character in mine, she said, I'm back as this character. And she said, I'm really glad to be back. And I said, I negotiated hard because I wouldn't take the rock bottom rates Crunchyroll was giving before. So it sounded like she got a raise, and some of the others that had been on cast had spoken up. So I'm guessing you don't just raise the rate of one person. I think it raised all ships, so to speak, hopefully.
So what? It's up to the most popular ones to kind of speak up in this case.
Yeah, and I know for Texas, probably that would be tough and stuff like that, given all the things. And when you look at it and what we've seen before, right, it's like a lot of the actors are a lot younger and stuff like that. And obviously, they're just running them through that studio. And when we talk about we're hearing the same voices and again, there's a reason for that too, right?
Kevin?
It just reminds me of the article where some of the Jujutsu Kaisen Zero English voice actors commented on how little they made, which was pretty insulting.
Yeah, that movie was huge.
No residuals.
It's, as I said, it's
And
just
that was when they were doing California and stuff like that for Crunchyroll. So it was obviously before, but it just sends it into overdrive, right?
there's a cost thing involved, I guess. Always is.
Well, as they said, they're all under Sony, and I'm sure Sony has a few cents, they could kind of trickle down and stuff like that if They can spend on worldwide rights to get Makoto Shinkai's recent opus, right? I think they can send some stuff further down the line, right?
You think. But, I mean, you tend to still be cynical of corporations in that sense.
And the other thing you would say is, remember, Sony, it's like this plays into the video games thing too, where you would think that if you can do good rates on the video game side, then what's stopping you from the anime side? And as we know, the bookings for anime and video game VAs and dubbing and stuff like that are the same booking people a lot of the time. That's another thing too.
Well, it's interesting, and of course, we on the topic of Sony, you can't say that Sony without saying PlayStation at the same time. Ah, what a mess, isn't it?
Well, I could tell you, remember, as we said, remember we said on the manga side, and so I mentioned Seven Seas, and so it sounds like on the manga side, I think they like to say for Seven Seas they are the biggest independent manga publisher because all the others are owned by some corporation now. But Seven Seas, it sounds like they had formed a union called United Workers of Seven Seas, and it was working with the Communications Workers of America, and they're hopefully seeking to get better conditions and hoping that I guess management of Seven Seas will recognize them and stuff like that. Which we'll see how that goes, because I guess that would be under the publisher Jason DeAngelis. So it'll be interesting to see on that one, because remember he started, as I told you guys earlier off air, he was a translator, did the first 4 volumes of Berserk, I remember, and then started Seven Seas, and they started very slow and not as many employees. And in the article, it's kind of this crazy thing where we talked about how over the pandemic, right, that manga kind of took off. So they had been in business probably for over 15 years, not as many employees, a lot of freelancers, but 2018 they were at 10 employees, and now in 2022 they're at 40 actual employees, 40 staff members, and then of course you have the freelancers. So it's interesting to see how they had that much growth, so you can see where they would want to have some say and say, hey, we need to pull it in a bit, because they talked about being overworked, underpaid, and not receiving benefits typical of the publishing industry and stuff like that. So we'll see how it does for them, but hopefully they find what they need on that end, because maybe in this case, hopefully it'll work for the better. The other one that's interesting is they talk about those 40 employees, the employees, but they also talk about freelancers, and freelancers will be interesting to see how they would factor into that union, because a lot of the times it's just the employees. But then I think of course, you look at electricians, construction workers, and like plumbers, different like more manual jobs that are unionized and stuff like that. And some of them, they don't always work right for one company. So I'm guessing that's how they would do it for those freelancers. But that would be interesting to see how that would work out.
We've had this discussion before about working as a translator in the manga side. So this is like another layer now, another nugget to add to this story, isn't it?
And yeah, they talked about letterers and translators. Like there's so many little things there just to make the manga come to us and stuff like that. And some of them you just forget about. You forget about those sound effects and how they get them into the image and stuff like that. And sometimes they take them from the Japanese and put them in English and stuff like that. And someone has to do that. And there is an art form, and we even see it in comics too, right? So.
Well, let's just see. I think a lot of it's just respect. And sometimes that lacks on the consumer side. Sometimes it's our fandom. You say that so cynically, or so sarcastically, Kevin.
It's a rhetorical question.
I know.
And I say that as someone who worked in human resources.
So, What do you? Okay, Kevin, Jeff. What do you guys think? I mean, of any part of this right now, or it's real, or is it just so dizzying that I guess we have to wait for the ride to at least slow down for any of us to regain our bearings?
There needs to
It's
be a real riot because at this moment, their union is saying that as of right now, it's okay to still buy their product. So things haven't gotten too hot just yet.
And that was the interesting part of that Twitter thing because they had their own Twitter account, right? For that union. And it's just crazy that people are saying, should I be buying the product? And I'm just like, you can still buy the product. It's like nothing that bad has happened yet. And they still, as you said, that was crazy that they said, still buy the product, please. And we never really see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying in other industries in that you just hear the negative, I feel.
Yeah, Jeff.
I understand that, this is the reality we live in, but like the entire story, like I think dizzying is probably a good description, but it makes me sad how profit focused everything is. Like the main takeaway I got from the article that was linked was the one immunocompromised voice actor who was like, yeah, they're forcing us to come back into the office, but I'm not safe doing that yet. And I don't know about the particular cities that these are recorded in, but I am, maybe unfairly, maybe very fairly guessing that, there's not going to be perfect ventilation and not most of the staff are going to be masked. And of course, while they're voice acting, they can't be. Um, but, theoretically, they're in a room anyways, like an isolated room. Um, but like even beyond that, like with that, like one of the arguments that they're saying the reason why they're forcing people back in is because they built a lot of new facilities either right before or during the pandemic when it was cheaper to do so, and they don't want to take a loss on the sparkly new studios they got. They don't have to, like they can figure out a way to get like one person in at a time or whatever.
Well,
um
this is the culture. I mean, that's the voice acting culture here in
yeah,
North America, right? There isn't that type of Are they trying to? Are they trying to do the?
I wish. Like
Once again, that Japanese way.
that's the
I
thing though.
keep
Like
joking around about.
that would be more of a cost though, right? Because, getting all the cast in at the same time is going to cost extra. It's going to make it more complicated. It's going to cost them more money. I'm not sure if they get catering, like that kind of thing.
I was thinking.
I was going to say, probably not,
You
right?
have to mention catering. I haven't had dinner yet, so.
But like, as far as like, sorry to unburst the bubble, like the art of acting like would improve for some of them at least, or at least it would give new different nuance to so many characters, and expressions and conversations if they did more of the full cast recording, like traditionally Japan has done. I'm not sure if they've gone back to that, as the pandemic's been softening slightly. Um, but
Not sure in Japan,
I
but
don't.
yeah.
The main thing is I don't think they're going to do that. I think that the English language culture, like there'll be an off, an episode where they have a lot of full cast stuff that they might try to get everyone in, but I don't think it'll be the norm, which I think is a shame. And full credit to these actors. A lot of them do so well, and you would never know that they're isolated recording weeks at a time differently in different states and sometimes different countries. But like I'm thinking about, again, from the artistic point of view, how interesting it would be to see more English dubs with a full cast recording. But again, it's tragic that so much of all of this is money based. That's why Batwoman and Legends of Tomorrow were canceled, because they're like, oh, we don't want to rent out the space anymore. Yeah, they're getting decent ratings for what they are. The Warner Brothers themselves likes it, or whoever higher up likes it. But yeah, the top brass doesn't want to pay for the studio space. And here in the anime industry, it's like the reverse, where it's like we want to make use of the studio space we made, so we're going to force people into dangerous situations. And again, like, I get that it's a business, and I'm, because it's a business, more stuff gets dubbed, more stuff gets made. Cool. But we can't let, you know, human rights fall by the wayside just because of this, which is why, the increased, unionization is probably good. And if we had, you know, stronger unions, maybe Nintendo wouldn't have buckled with Smash Brothers. And I think his name's uh, what is Pitt's name? I keep forgetting. Pitt's voice actor, and is Anthony Del Rey, I think.
That sounds
Fantastic.
right, I believe,
Yeah,
Jeff.
yeah. I love his like voice acting. Great, great actor. But he didn't get credited for Smash Brothers because he's a union actor, I believe, and Nintendo only hired non-union unless they decided not to get credit. Um, so because he liked the character and wanted to please fans, he did it anyways. And actors and artists should get credit. And yeah, if unions are, I don't know if a union can get powerful enough to beat Nintendo, but maybe if it was big enough, there'd at least be pressure there. If like most of their cast said, no instead of three. Um, so yeah, like definitely like more power for human rights and artistic integrity and respect and recognition, all good stuff. Um, well, sadly, as you kind of implied, we'll see what happens.
Mhm. Well, you made me think as you were going on saying all of that. You know what came to mind? Out of all people, all characters, or all people in the world, Maud Flanders. Out of all the people, but you know part of the story there, right? Why they killed off Maud Flanders in The Simpsons.
Mm-hmm.
I read about this a long time ago.
Yeah, it's just the woman who played her wasn't going to be available. Forgot her, Maggie Roswell, I think.
Which is
Yeah, I
ridiculous.
think it was like over his salary, right?
Yeah, it was just
And
it's just weird circumstances that led to her character being killed off.
we've seen it, I know, on the anime side way back in the aughts and stuff like that on some Bandai releases and Geneon releases where you had those really odd names, and that's because they were part of the union, part of SAG, and so they had to use a pseudonym basically if they wanted to
Oh
get work
yeah.
elsewhere. And so that's one of those really weird workarounds. You don't see it as much, which is interesting. It's kind of like they're either
Anymore.
all union or not all union and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
there was a lot of that going on in the aughts. Yeah.
and the other thing I know, to put a point on, Jeff, so for the dubs, Jeff, all the Crunchyroll stuff, it sounds like they've went to Funimation. So that is in Flower Mound, Texas, which is Dallas, Fort Worth, greater area and stuff like that. So unfortunately, that's where they are. And a lot of them, like, probably went there because it's a right to work state. So it's kind of not the greatest. And then when they were building those facilities, they were building them more with one person coming in and out. So I'm not sure they'd have to go somewhere else if they wanted to
Yeah.
do like a full ensemble, you know what I mean? Recording, which is unfortunate and stuff like that. But more power to, I'd say it's like you say these things, you know how we kind of badmouth Netflix and we say good things about Netflix. But one of the good things about Netflix is someone there decided they had a conversation with SAG and decided to make all their anime productions for the dubs on the English side all union and union approved, and they went with it. And that was good on them. You know what I mean? To make sure those people were taken care of. And who knows? Hopefully that's a good sign that they think about it for other languages too, right? Because there's more than just English actors out there. There's other regions that probably need the same help as well because they do many languages, as we know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe this is where the competition thing is good, even though it's just big on big. right? Well, let's continue to be fair. As I said, we got to continue. We got to move on. And this is a nice story. This is a really interesting story. I mean, it's sometimes we get so emotionally attached to a character, but sometimes it's because of the person who played them. And we're going to see a lot of scenarios where, we could see in a bunch of scenarios where beloved characters will be voiced multiple times by, different people. It happened to, and just remember, it happened to Ash Ketchum, among others.
Mhm.
So this is a really interesting story from our perspective, and just can't wait to see how this goes.
It
So
took
let's
quite a while to get. It took quite a while to get used to Ash's voice actor change.
yeah.
I think
So,
that
I
the
remember.
the new
um,
the new actor does well, but it's interesting like how Pokemon itself is tied so much to nostalgia, that it is
Perfect.
still jarring. Like honestly, like for as much dubbed as I watch, like I primarily watch Pokemon in Japanese now. But yeah, it's still strange to me.
yeah. Well, I
It
think a
took a
lot of people.
while for her to get used to the new role. Like
Yeah.
it was noticeably different in the beginning, but then I feel like after like a good season, it sounded almost the same as Veronica Taylor's
Mhm.
rendition.
Anyway, so let's start to move on, and we're about an hour in. We should start to wind it down, and maybe lighten it just a little bit as we go into. Well, I hate using after everything. After what's
Yeah.
happened in the last couple weeks,
The
I know
short
Tim and Sid
form
made the
stories.
joke about using the term "the bullets" in talking about stories in brief. But let's talk about items in brief. These are little things that may become big things, or presented in point form, but can become larger essay-like discussions.
Were we going to ask Kevin if Hunter is still on hiatus?
Yeah, let's start there because I know you're excited about this, Kevin.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm like excited, but so it's still on hiatus at the moment. But Yoshihiro Togashi apparently he's created a Twitter account and he posted a picture indicating that he is drawing new chapters. Fans of the series will know that Hunter x Hunter is famous for its long hiatuses, and its current hiatus is the longest one yet.
How
Yeah,
long has it been?
2018.
About
November
3 years,
26th,
4 years.
2018. So we're past the 3.5 year mark now. It's so usually what Togashi does nowadays is he'll draw 10 chapters, enough for Shueisha to put out a book, and then he'll go back on hiatus. This is because
Hell of a way to do your work, by the way.
and this was because I feel like that happened because at around, I want to say it was probably 2000 and probably around 2006, 2007. What happened was he went on. This is when he went on his first big hiatus in 2006. This would probably have been around March. So that, and basically what happened was, okay, maybe I don't have the exact time frame correct, but when he went on a long hiatus, he was only 1 or 2 chapters away from Shueisha compiling a new book to sell. And so they probably talk to him and be like, okay, you know what, like, if whenever you feel up for it, please draw at least 10 chapters so we can put out a book. That's how I've assumed it's the case, but because now whenever he does decide to draw, he draws enough for a book and then he'll go back on hiatus, and it's been like this since 2007, 2008. So, and initially people thought that this was like a fake account or someone was being a troll, but then
I think it was
apparently
One Punch Man's artist, Yusuke Murata supposedly
Murata,
confirmed it.
yes. He initially actually deleted the tweet because he wasn't sure if he was supposed to have commented on it, but it was later confirmed that yes, that this is him. So he got, I don't know, I think 600,000 follows within like a few days, and lots of the king is back, the goat is coming back on social media. It's yeah, you know, I've always like I've always, I don't want to say I've always done this, but I remember when I was so far behind on Hunter x Hunter, and then I eventually caught up, and he was on hiatus, and you know, when I was young, I didn't understand why, because it's like, you know, didn't really learn. I didn't really know about his health conditions at the time. I didn't know about his struggles with Yu Yu Hakusho towards the end of its publication. So, you know, and where the story is at now, in my mind, the election arc is the end of Hunter x Hunter, and this current arc is just bonus. So with me, it's like, you know, I'm just happy when he feels up for putting some stuff out for us to enjoy.
Well, anything is better than nothing, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're so tied to it.
I honestly think he's gonna die before he finishes it.
Well,
At the pace he's going at, and because he's said himself in interviews that he has so much he wants to tell, and this current arc, I don't see this being a short arc. They're currently on a boat right now. The main character is nowhere to be seen. Gon is still in a near comatose state, and we'll see who's been on a boat longer, Berserk or Hunter x Hunter.
So the question then is, Kevin, with 4 chapters confirmed, Gon's gonna wake up and they'll see land, right?
No, Gon's Gon is not in this arc at all.
Or he'll reappear, I guess.
It's just strange that you put it in those terms, since we have passed the first anniversary of Kentaro Miura's passing too. So
actually, it's funny because with Gon, like the way Togashi wrote with the end of the Chimera Ant arc, it's like, how does Gon even come back as a character? That's all I'm going to say on that.
Yeah, not familiar, so I won't even fathom, I guess. But there's something to anticipate if you're a fan.
Oh, you know what's funny? Just very quickly, someone created a chart with the movements of the Shonen Jump magazine since the last chapter of Hunter x Hunter. Only 4 series from when Hunter x Hunter was still on hiatus are ongoing, which would be One Piece, Black Clover, Jujutsu Kaisen, and My Hero Academia. Multiple popular series had ended since that chapter, including Gintama, including Demon Slayer, Food Wars, Haikyuu, The Promised Netherland, Dr. Stone ended recently, Act Age, among others. And then all these other series that have started and ended at the same time, mostly stuff that's been canned. And some stuff that's been ongoing too. It's just interesting to see how many things have come out or ended or have been started and ongoing since.
Well, it's like one of those, okay, when such and such event happened, these things were going on as well, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
All right, now I'm done.
Okay, cool. I don't really know what else to add to it, because I've never read Hunter x Hunter, so
it's honestly a really good work.
Honestly, people are into it. So who am I to question it?
It's more like I appreciate the artistry of it and how Togashi uses Hunter x Hunter as his playground to try out different genres every arc of Hunter x Hunter is essentially a different genre with its own set of rules and limitations. Like I know he's really into games, so that does factor into his work, especially during Greed Island, which was like his RPG adventure kind of arc.
It just sounds, it sounds cool if you're you really do have to be into it, but I so respect that though. Him and the fandom. Let's move on then. Okay, last episode a month ago we talked at length about Iron Chef, I think. And I mentioned that there would be a reboot. I was thinking it would be a Japanese reboot. No, it isn't. First visuals came out from this reboot, and it's going to be based on Iron Chef America. I said, which I guess that's silly me. Maybe we should just make episode 65 disappear, like I made some episodes of the original series disappear. Okay, so Alton Brown, Mark Dacascos, they're involved again in this, and well, there's a lot of layers to this story to me that's I find fascinating. You kind of want to talk a lot about the history of the original TV series as well, the original Japanese TV series when talking Iron Chef included. Maybe the most significant changes, aside from the fact that the Iron Chef America license is no longer with Food Network, it's with Netflix, and with it they're going to try and expand the franchise and have make other regions as well. I think a Mexican version is set in the near future. Let me just look up the Chicago Sun-Times article. Iron Chef Mexico and Brazil are planned. Probably the most significant difference is that there's no longer Food Network personalities serving as the Iron Chefs, but there are well-known celebrity chefs in it, amongst them Ming Tsai and Marcus Samuelsson, who will serve as Iron Chefs in this upcoming version, which will premiere sometime in June, I think in mid-June.
Kind of be funny to see like Gordon Ramsay, how he would look as Iron Chef, just yelling at everyone.
Well,
just to make the perfect risotto, right? And then see if he made the perfect risotto, if they look at it and say, this is
he'll
terrible.
Turn it upside down.
Terrible.
He'll turn it upside down before putting it on somebody's apron. And it would be like he would be like the Iron Throne of Iron Chefs in many respects. So that's one of the more significant differences. But then, as more has been made publicized, there was a long conversation about Alton Brown himself and the fact that he's now left Food Network to work on this reboot. And I think we should also preface this by also talking about, well, the fact it's on Netflix. Netflix has had an agreement with Fuji Television, which is the original producers and licensors of the Iron Chef franchise. So I guess, like you hinted, you said, James, maybe that deal is going okay, and with the rights to Iron Chef having expired at Food Network, well, you can finish the sentence if you want.
I was just saying, it's interesting when you talk about the agreement. A lot of those shows, as we know, were Japanese language originals and stuff like that, and that's how we were watching. We were watching them subs, so it's interesting that it isn't being done in on the Japan side and stuff like that, and that they decided they were going to bring it similar to the American side and stuff like that. And I guess, as you said, do a more international version, and I guess maybe each region may have their own Iron Chef episodes and stuff like that. So I guess maybe Japan might even get its own original episodes, right, in Japanese in that, which would be intriguing.
Which would be intriguing to see what Netflix is willing to do with the license now.
As you mentioned, Mexico and then Brazil, of course. So,
it's, I guess, so the other personality worth mentioning in this story is Mark Dacascos himself. Oh yeah, the other final new little tweak is that Alton Brown, if you've been a longtime watcher of Iron Chef America, you know that Alton Brown does the play-by-play by himself, or did. He now has a color commentator in the form of Kristen Kish, who was the winner of Top Chef season 10. So there's something else to mention. Okay, let's go back to Mark Dacascos for a second. And I've always talked about this story. Even in the version 1 era, I've always talked about how he ended up with the chairman role and got to play the nephew of Takashi Kaga's character and his take on the chairman. How many of you guys remember the story? Well, Kevin, Geoff, you remember the story as I've told it before?
Vaguely.
James, I know, remembers.
I vaguely remember little details here and there.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
probably remember as you say it.
Okay. No, Dacascos has been was once interviewed out of character about the role, and he said he didn't audition for it. He didn't really audition for it. The producers kind of headhunted him. Why did they headhunt him? They remember him from the live-action Crying Freeman. They actually liked it, and they thought he would be a good choice to play the chairman in this version of Iron Chef. And this came off the heels of an attempt at a USA version of Iron Chef, which kind of fell really flat. And maybe that's an understatement. Probably flatter than a souffle going wrong. So Fuji kind of took control of this version, a little bit more control, when they collaborated with Food Network to make this version, and they headhunted Mark Dacascos, and that's how he basically ended up with the role. It wasn't necessarily he auditioned for it; it's the producers actually wanted him. And I remember Adam's reaction when I told him that story. I think it was either I made him vomit on the inside, or I licked his ear, something to that effect. But that's the short version of how Mark Dacascos basically ended up with the role of the chairman. But there's that. So I thought we'd mention that and try and correct some of the errors we made. But I guess in a roundabout way, the revelation is, who knows, the franchise still may return to its Japanese roots yet, with the revelation that Netflix is out to eventually produce regional versions.
Yes. The original chairman's still alive, right? Can they bring him back?
Didn't I mention that part of the story too?
No, you did not.
They killed him off. He was killed off long ago, because in real life, Takeshi Kaga had a falling out with the producers.
This I remember.
Yes, in 2002, they killed off his character, and that's where they started this line of nephews coming out. That's something that's sort of buried and really only known in the Japanese language version specifically. But it's like, that's where you get a long line of nephews, long-lost nephews, being the chairman of the various regional versions of Iron Chef, and they make a constant reference to him as their uncle. But at a point, he was never even mentioned by name. That's how bad the fallout was, much less his image. So, and an attempted revival of Iron Chef, I think it was about 10 years ago. It starts with the new chairman, who's another nephew, standing at Kaga's grave, and then he walks away into the new kitchen stadium. That's how that series started.
Does Iron
There's
Chef
never been made but to your point, Mo, that fact has never been mentioned in non-Japanese language versions of Iron Chef.
So
it could happen.
Does Iron Chef have lore? Like, are there like plot lines, or is it just like intros and outros, and like it's just like set dressing?
They try to make it a plot. Like the Japanese version always tried to make a plot, rivalries between restaurants, or the Iron Chef Chinese trying to ward off challenges from one of the most prestigious Chinese restaurants in Yokohama, or the Japanese style of Morimoto rubbing a lot of traditional Japanese chefs the wrong way, and even having a group of chefs go after him. So there's some plot element, some interesting plot elements, but I guess it's just for television. And that idea was kind of muted in Western versions, but it made for good television, I guess, at the time. So who knows what will come out in this new version that'll premiere in June. I'll put that on the bin. I'll put that on the queue because I'll probably still have my Netflix subscription. The only real question is, when will I get the time to watch it? Maybe after Be the Beginnings and whatever Maria Kondo presently has on there. Okay, so which one do you want to go with? Do you want to go before we go tonight? Anime North stuff, or do you want to talk about this films article just to keep it light? Or which order do you want to go with? Anybody?
Talk about Aeon last.
Okay, we'll talk about Aeon last. Okay, it's a nice little kicker before we go to the community calendar. Collider. I stumbled on this about 10 days ago. The 7 greatest anime films worth watching twice. And it listed 7 films, as the article said, that are that good. And some of them you could see coming, and others you don't. So let's see. Let's go down the list. And then
before we go, Mike. So, how many were Hosoda? How many were Shinkai? And how many were Miyazaki?
Well, that's what we're going down the list.
Let's go through the list. Let's go down the list, and then let's see if anything sticks out.
Or were we surprised?
Yeah. Well, some will surprise you, some will not. Akira, no surprise. Ocean Waves.
That was surprising.
That is a bit surprising, but still Ghibli.
I was like, oh, this writer's cultured. Okay.
Your Name. Okay, there's your first Shinkai. The Case of Hannah and Alice.
This was surprising as well.
Bit of surprising?
Yeah, it's I actually regret not watching this when it was screening here years ago, because I did hear some good things about it, but then just couldn't make the time to go. But yeah, it was like it's like a mystery. It has a lot of mystery themes to it.
Okay. Perfect Blue. That shouldn't be surprising, should it? Perfect Blue being on this list?
A good choice. A great choice. I slightly prefer Millennium Actress over it.
I was thinking Tokyo Godfathers. If you're going to pick one for Con, I think Tokyo Godfathers would be the better, if it isn't on the list.
But little doubt that a Con movie deserves to be on this list.
I've never seen Perfect Blue, but as a former Yama member, it always will have a special place in my heart, because when we would do Anime Win, Lose, or Draw, which is Anime Pictionary, there was a stain on the whiteboard that was blue, and everyone would just point to it, and we would know it was Perfect Blue, and it became kind of an internal meme. So even though I'm sure it's a wonderful movie, but even though I haven't seen it, I still have a very fond place for this movie in my heart.
Was this
considering our history with game shows?
When Win, Lose, or Draw was done at Fan Expo all those years ago?
Yeah, when we did it, right? When our group did it. Anyway, Ponyo. Okay, there's your obligatory Miyazaki, but I'm not sure that would, maybe much like everything else. Oh well, Kiki's Delivery Service. Okay, so two for Miyazaki on that list, and that's it. That's the list of 7.
Ponyo is underrated.
A little surprised to see Ponyo, actually. I didn't finish it. I've watched maybe half of the film on Netflix. But you know what? This is not 7 greatest movies of all time. These are just 7 great movies.
Movies worth watching twice. Yeah. And it's always 7 greatest anime films worth watching twice.
What
greatest might be a bit of a. Of course, that's always subjective.
What makes Ponyo really good for the watching twice thing, which, for the record, I generally don't do a whole lot, unless it's, I'm showing a movie for class or something. But with Ponyo, I feel that the visuals are so interesting, and it's like the Ghibli tears, but because it's ocean based, the Ghibli tears are part of the landscape at times. I think when it comes to actual animation, there's a lot to look at with Ponyo, which I think is really helps that sort of rewatchability.
Okay. Well, okay. Let's save the further discussion on this. I want to come back to this in another form, but I want you guys to at least come up with a couple movies that are worth watching twice. I'm not. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, and I
Totoro?
really want.
Totoro.
Huh?
Totoro.
Okay.
You know what? I would say there's some that we've seen that
No.
have kept on coming back that I think would
Oh,
be on
we
people's
already had this
list
discussion.
that
Yeah.
are not. And you know what? When I keep on seeing that it's kept on going back into theaters, Promare, I think, would be one people would watch again and again, it seems.
Yeah. I thought
Okay. I guess we will have this discussion.
I was like,
I want
when you
to.
said two movies, Mike, I was like, yeah, Promare and Redline.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's just
Redline I love, but I'm not sure many people would see it twice. But Promare, it seems like.
Yeah, I will. I'm going to try it. I'm going to defer for a little bit because I want to at least think about this before Anime North itself.
Promare, I think, would be one, but the other one I'd have to think about because there have been so many great movies that have come out and stuff like that from different places, not just the usual suspects, as we say, right?
Yeah, I just would have to think about it for myself. I mean, I applaud you guys for thinking so fast about it. But for me, I'd have to think about it, and maybe I want to have that discussion with the 2 or 3 members of the audience that'll come to see a live taping of Anime Roundtable.
I mean, there's a way you can cheat with this, and if you stick with Hosoda, you can watch our war game Digimon, and then Summer Wars, and then if you stretch your eyes a bit, Boy and the Beast, and then I haven't seen Belle yet, but from the trailers, like you can watch
we haven't gone.
the same movie 4 times.
Yeah,
I love
so
I don't love
basically the box set.
I don't necessarily love the man, but I love a lot of those movies. So
Which is a fair point. Okay, but as I said, I want to just throw it out there to the audience, and then maybe we can hear from them again at Anime North. Okay, I guess now we're reaching the end, and we do want to talk a bit Anime North.
Actually, were we going to talk about the one movie before we finish off about Shinkai and stuff like that? Because we found out where the new movie won in the end.
You hinted this. You hinted that Makoto Shinkai's latest work, and I forgot the name off the
Shizumi
top of my
no
head.
Toji Mari.
That's
And
the
that's
working
the
title.
working title. So they just have a working
Domain
title.
name.
But as we
Yeah,
know, a
okay.
lot of them, they go, like even Hosoda, they seem to go to France and Cannes and then sell it to different distributors, right? And this time, Sony basically got everywhere excluding Asia. So it's basically Crunchyroll in North America and stuff like that. But their money came through. They didn't go to G Kids like they did for the last one.
Well, should we be really surprised?
Not too surprising, but they should be able to at least, I guess, promote it in other things, maybe for the Oscars and other awards and things like that, because I think that's how G Kids did a lot of things that they said, we respect the cinematic experience, we'll get them into the theaters, we'll promote your movie to award shows and things like that. And I think that really resonated with a lot of creators that went to them and stuff like that, and resonated with Ghibli after I feel like they soured on Disney and stuff like that because Disney just didn't put the push in as much for a lot of the films that weren't Miyazaki and stuff like that.
So do you think this will be a turn for the way Sony handles it and possible cinematic releases? I guess they do want to give a shot in the arm for the theater experience in that sense.
Well, they've already done it, as we know, and things like that. And Crunchyroll did it, of course, before with Jujutsu Kaisen Zero and stuff like that. So they have done it before, but I guess this is in a bigger sphere, so to speak, right? Because they're just doing multiple regions and stuff like that. And it's like pretty much the whole world, right? So that's a pretty big, tall order, right?
Yeah, except Asia, which is pretty big in its own right. But yeah, this is interesting. I just found it intriguing news considering a lot of the rest of the catalog ended up with G Kids.
Yeah, no, we were talking about that before. Like June 7th, supposedly
Yeah.
is going to be Voices of a Distant Star, Place Promised in Our Early Days, 5 centimeters per second, Children Who Chase Lost Voices, and She and Her Cat all went to G Kids and stuff like that. And they're going to be on Blu-ray on June 7th. And it's like 3 different Blu-rays that are going to have all those. So
I never looked at the release concerning that. If it was a box set, I'd be in.
no, it's not a box set, unfortunately. So it's 3 separate Blu-rays, and they're on Amazon for $24.99 at the moment.
Okay. Wait for the sale or get a coupon.
And I think if you want voices, they packaged that one in, I think, with 5 centimeters per second.
Oh.
And I think even She and Her Cat was packaged in with 5 centimeters per second. Supposedly, the reason behind that is that happened in Japan too, weirdly enough.
Hey.
Oh, because they're all short.
Yeah, they're all short.
Those are all shorts. No, of course.
Well, the other two are shorts. 5 cm is like 3 short stories, but they link together.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if they do bring those out and put them in theaters, kind of like what they do with the Ghibli catalog and stuff like that. Because even though they're old, they still go to the different theaters and they still fill people in the seats, it seems. Because I don't think Cineplex and those cinemas in the States would keep doing them if you don't get warm bodies in the seats, right?
Warm bodies. Okay.
Well, no, it's like most still going to the theaters, so I'm guessing we're still doing good, right?
Mo?
I mean, yeah.
Okay, now before we go tonight, we do have to fulfill our duties as official podcast of Anime North and talk Anime North for a couple minutes, because this weekend would have been Anime North weekend. And failing that, it's not the case, but it's still going to happen between July 15th to 17th. The virtual pre-show will happen this week, where all your mainstays that have been at Anime North and maybe to some degree at Anime North Online, they will make an appearance. So a kimono lesson, Anime Hell, D20, the 404s. They expect to see a version of that during the virtual pre-show. And of course, Kaidash. Got to get him on the show at some point in the near future before Anime North itself, and maybe we'll see how he. Maybe we'll get him on after he's recovered from doing the pre-show on Saturday. It'll run on the Anime North Twitch channel, Anime North Compass, from 3 to 11 p.m. this coming Saturday. This episode will be up before Saturday, by the way. I'll almost guarantee that.
Most recent one, Mike, for the pre-show said at 6 p.m. you can see VTubers in conversation.
Okay.
There's many different things, because as you said, kimono, there's tons Anime Hell we knew at the beginning and stuff like that. So there's a lot of interesting things to get us going before we hit the real thing in July, right? So
yeah, for better or worse. And I guess in a future episode, we'll talk about the for better or worse scenario as convention season begins. Okay, on the Anime North front, let's go through some of this, because we can't go through all of it. Is there one thing that has your attention in the latest news from Anime North that you guys want to bring up? And I'll go around the table at least once.
I was going to say, are you guys going to Nomanoichi? That's what I want to know for Kevin and for Mike as well.
Kevin, your thoughts?
We don't know yet.
The applications go until the end of the week, I think.
Until Saturday, May 28th.
Applications started on Sunday and will end on Saturday.
Okay. Which I'll at least give it the college try. But first of all, Kevin, do you have a desire for any inkling of desire for it, or?
I'm going to be creating my application either today or tomorrow.
Okay. For me, it actually Nomanoichi will conflict with the tapings. Anime Roundtable is set to do 2 live episodes on Friday the 15th and Saturday the 16th at 9 p.m. We have been allotted a room for 9 p.m. The taping itself probably won't begin at 9. We're just going to have time to set up the board and the microphones. But you can come in, we'll chat, and then we'll actually do a live taping. Talk the headlines, or maybe be able to talk to a guest of honor. So that's there's the news, at least Anime Northwise and Anime Roundtable.
Are we going to be able to talk to a VTuber, Mike?
Yes.
I put the challenge right there. There's the challenge.
I will say I would love to talk to one of the guests of honor, but I'd love for it to be more face to face. Okay. Okay, so something that you guys want to mention that caught your attention? The VTubers. Lots of VTubers, for sure, this year.
I saw that across a lot of conventions, though, which is interesting. It adds the question of how exactly does a VTuber attend a physical convention?
They don't. They stream from their houses.
And then they go to our crappy hotel Wi-Fi, and then we barely see them, right?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Well, who knows
But,
how this will go, right?
just to clarify who's showing up, it's gonna be Project Melody, Iron Mouse, and Natasha Nyanners from V Shoujo.
I feel like of all of them, Iron Mouse is the biggest one I know. But I'm not sure. Do you guys have a bigger name of those three, you think?
No, it's crazy because I do feel like, at least just based on personal perception, it does seem like Iron Mouse is a lot more popular now than Project Melody, especially considering how Project Melody was one of the earliest VTubers, so to speak, and it's.
I feel like Iron Mouse has done a lot of promos with different people, like with the Trash Taste team, and also with Chris Broad from Abroad in Japan and other YouTubers, so to speak. So I feel like that's part of it, maybe in my mind, why I think she's maybe bigger than she is, maybe, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, for sure. And plus, she's very active because it's known that the person behind Iron Mouse is basically homebound. Doesn't because she does have health condition. So and she loves to stream. She's like, if I could, I think she said it on the Trash Taste 24-hour live stream a while back, where like if she's like, if I could stream all day, I could. Like if I didn't have to sleep, I'd do that.
And as we said, she started indie and then she signed to one of the labels, so to speak. So it was an interesting journey.
Mm-hmm.
I guess on a personal level, that's an interesting story.
Okay. Oh, actually, another guest that caught my attention was actually Ziran J. Zhao.
Another YouTuber. Okay, what about?
They're popular for their children's books.
Okay. Oh yeah, the Iron Widow and okay.
Yeah. They're a big Yu-Gi-Oh fan as well.
Well, I can tell from the picture.
Big
okay, let's go through the guest list as we know so far. Aaron Dismuke, voice actor. So a lot of English voice actors. Kara Eberly, Richard Epcar, Caitlin Glass, Ellen Stern. All there, all mentioned.
Alphonse is coming back.
And I guess all of them are going to be in person and stuff like that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of the dilemma still as we trudge through this stage of the pandemic.
I guess it was more the thing I was thinking. It's one thing if you're in the same country, right, as the convention, but I always wondered about the border and stuff like that, how that would affect things. You know what I mean? Even as we get better, quote unquote.
Yeah, and I get the feeling we'll talk about that a little bit more in due time. The one guest that has my attention is Katsura Sunshine, the English Rakugo master storyteller, because his story and how he got into that world is intriguing. I've seen bits and pieces of that story over the years, at least mentioned on NHK World. He used to have a feature on NHK World in between episodes. So, and he's Canadian, so picking his brain would be really fascinating, and I'm sure. And if you're into the more traditional, comic style of Japanese storytelling, or traditional style of Japanese humor, this is he's probably one of your go-tos, and I think worth mentioning and worth eventually talking to. So that's what stuck out to me. Mo, Geoff, anything that would stick out to you from Anime North, or really irrelevant because,
well,
there's nothing at this point?
No, I mean, I'm pretty good.
Geoff?
Kevin, described him as Alphonse. fair. But for me, that actor will now be, um, you know, more to me Dr. Stone. I really I love that show so much, and I think that it's such a fun role. There's been a lot of criticism from people who I guess manga readers or people who know Japanese, that some of the voice or the dialogue changes, but I think that maybe that's more writing. But yeah, I love that role. Great actor. Unfortunately, I feel that I have finally aged out of signature hunting and photo hunting and stuff like that. Makes me feel a little old, but if there was a panel and nothing else was going on, I might see how big the lineup would be. But I want to echo Mike and give a shout out to Katsura Sunshine. When I went to teach in Japan, the consulate had an event, and he was the guest of honor, and I was so excited because I feel that I had just missed a performance here in Canada by him. I forget if it was at JCCC or I'm not sure if he's been to Anime North or the Mississauga. It was something here, but I remember hearing about him and thinking like, oh, that sounds interesting. I'd like to see that, and I was disappointed. Much like I think the aquarium here in Toronto opened like the weekend that I left for Japan. Like there was a lot of like, oh, I'm missing out and stuff, despite going to Japan for a year. But when they kind of shuffled us into this stage and they like unveiled him, because he was a surprise. Like I don't think anyone, maybe but me and one other person, knew who this performer was. But I was like, it was a shock, to see him there, and I was very excited. I got a photo with him, and yeah, the type, I absolutely recommend. Unless there's something that you absolutely adore that's happening at the same time as one of his performances, I don't think that he's getting enough hype here, because it's, again, at this point, everyone, the audience knows me. Like I love the cultural exchange in every aspect of media and arts and culture. So this Canadian who wears maple flag kimono or traditional clothing, which he had custom made. It is rakugo. It is a traditional Japanese form of comedic storytelling, but it is absolutely accessible to a North American and Canadian audience. The cadence is like a combination of an English language and Japanese delivery, which is great, but it's not like any way insensitive. Like it is very much more the rhythm of speaking, which he's managed to like really combine and do wonders with. And it is legitimately funny. Like it's not it's not stand up, it's not improv. It is a different form of comedy. It's a little bit more little like rises and falls of like waves of build up. Like it's not one huge long setup that ends with a punchline, but there's elements of that in the performance, and he is an engaging performer. And if you have interest in just echoing Mike again, if you have interest in this sort of like different form of Japanese media and entertainment, absolutely worth taking the time. I don't know if he's stuck in Canada. Like I don't know the scenario that he is here for, but it honestly doesn't matter. Take advantage of this if you can. It is probably one of the most unique experiences you'll find at Anime North this year. So yeah, full recommendation there from me.
Yeah, full recommendation from me as well. And I haven't seen nearly as many performances. I've seen the odd little bit he did for NHK. What I just remember seeing his interviews too. So I mean, it was so long ago. I would have to look again just to research. But it would be something that certainly has my attention. So there's our thoughts going into the virtual pre-show this weekend. Of course, the Anime North talk won't end with that. We are about a month and a half away. And yes, maybe I'll actually start to talk a little bit more at length about the panel I'll be doing at Anime North as well. Stay tuned for that. But in any event, that's it. That's our show for tonight. So before we end, let's mention once again where you can contact us. animeroundtable@gmail.com, at Anime Roundtable, animeroundtable.com. We do have a presence on Twitch, twitch.tv/Anime Roundtable, and on YouTube. Hopefully I'll figure out something to add to it. And don't forget to give us a review wherever you're enjoying this, whether it be on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and the like. Because reviews, good reviews, we're begging for good reviews, will always keep us in the loop to hopefully corral a few more listeners. What type of reviews are we looking for, Kevin?
We would greatly appreciate 5-star reviews on any platform that lets you do so, because we would like to have more visibility. And yes, please let us know that you're alive and give us your feedback, your constructive criticism, your praise, your love and affection, the works.
It's always appreciated. Okay, this is the part where I say we typically do episodes every other week. Lately, we've been doing it every other month. We'll try and be a little bit more frequent. So in any event, hit the subscribe or follow button on all the platforms we're on so you can be notified whenever we add something new for your enjoyment. The theme song is entitled Fubuki Snowstorm by Piko Misaki, which is the title track of her most recent album. You can check out more of her music at picoinfinity.com or on her Facebook page at Pico Zen Music. So until next time, thanks for listening, good night from Toronto, and join us again for another edition of the Anime Roundtable.